The challenges in my life are self-inflicted for the most part. Hang on, hold the phone. Is that better? Whoa, calm down. Stop, calm down. All right. Got to check my calendar. My wife just came to me and said, so-and-so photographer just moved to north of town and they want us to come over and have dinner and then we can sleep over, and this is actually a pretty famous photographer and she's very cool and I like her and she has a new book and I want to do an interview. If I go up there, maybe she'll sit down with me, do an audio interview so that I can share it with you guys. And I got a Q&A and I got to give a lecture tonight for about an hour and a half starting at 7 p.m. and I've got to put the final tweaks on that presentation. If I only did what was required of me in my job, my life would be a lot easier. It'd be a lot easier, but for some reason, I just can't take the lazy way out. There's too many things to do. I did not have any intention of making another Q&A film until I returned to New Mexico in September. The problem is I got slammed by people sending me questions, and not only are they good questions, but there's also some time elements on some of these. Some of these people are leaving to go start projects, and they're like, I kind of need to know this now. So actually, I'm going to totally mess this up. I know it. I know I'm going to mess this up because I'm going to forget that these questions are at the bottom of the list, and then I'm going to go back to the top of the list. Man, you know what? I'm not doing that. I'm going to have to record 2 Q&As over the next couple of weeks, and for those of you with the time element, I'm sorry. I'm kind of slammed. I've got a lot going on. I'm kind of a big deal. Question number 1 this week, and remember, I'm one person with one opinion. I know that my opinion about photographic things in particular tends to rub certain people the wrong way. That's not really my intention, although I do think that's kind of funny. And like funny haha. And yes, I'm laughing at you, not just with you. So I'm just one person with one opinion. And these are good questions, and I appreciate anybody that took the time to send these in. Wow, did I mention I pulled my calf? I did. And it hurts. I'm old and brittle. What do you think of the media? That's a good question. I studied photojournalism. I was a part of the media for years, and thankfully I'm not part of it anymore. But I still love the media, but what I would call real, legitimate media, or most of the time now that means print media, because I think that's where you're still able to get good, in-depth stories is through print, but even that is very, very difficult. I think a lot of media organizations, I know, they're owned by big corporations. They're owned by financial institutions. Oh yeah, financial institutions owning some of these and making it kind of difficult to find out if you go and search for who owns a specific media company and you find yourself running in circles and you can't quite figure out who owns it. Well, chances are it's somebody who doesn't want you to know, and they are controlling the news. So, but here's the thing. Let me do an impression, because you guys know how good and accurate and stunning my impressions are. Let me think about this for a second. Okay, see if this sounds familiar. I got to figure out what I'm going to say here. Hi, it's Chet in the studio, and last night 4 groups were caught handing out white nationalist, white supremacist materials on the South Shore. But before we get to that story, let's check in with Kip Cordon Bleu at the pet parade. Kip, how's it going? Kip comes in. Well, it's a bummer about that Nazi stuff, Chet, but here at the pet parade, we just have a lot of dog-tired owners. Back to you in the studio. That is local and national news for the most part. That is not news. That is a non-journalist, for the most part, reading off a teleprompter or reading off a script that was provided by somebody else for a variety of different reasons that have nothing to do with accuracy or news or the truth. That is what a lot of people listen to. That's not media. So I think the media has done themselves a disservice. For example, CNN. I'll throw CNN under the bus. A couple of days ago, I'm on CNN looking for something. Don't know why, because that's not a news source that I would typically go to. I don't think that's a very good news source. I think they're kind of an entertainment, weird middle ground between a game show like Price is Right and some sort of weird guy trapped in a basement, news editing articles. And all of a sudden it's like news article, Brad Pitt in a skirt. That's not media. That's not journalism. That's clickbait. That's embarrassing. And none of these organizations can ever complain again. because the vast majority of them gave up on doing journalism because journalism takes time and it's expensive and all they're looking for is clicks. And they know psychologically that they can hook you in, and that of all those stories on that entire front page on CNN, which probably has 120 on the conservative side, 120 different things that you can click on the top. Imagine back in the day, above the fold on a newspaper. Above the fold means the front page of the newspaper, above where the paper folds. You had probably on any given day, maximum of 3 places that you could engage with. Lead story, column story on the right-hand side. Sometimes if it was a huge dramatic event, you had one choice. You had a 6-column photo and a headline. Now look at the homepage of CNN and tell me that that's journalism. It's not. The New York Times, look at the issues they've had over the last decade. Look at the retractions. Look at the scandals. Look at who owns the Washington Post. This is not good. Look at what Fox News is. Now you have whatever the ON network or whatever. I heard they're getting terminated. It's not news. It's not media. I think if you're looking for good stories, you really have to look. I think The Guardian out of the UK is far superior to any American outlet. I think the BBC on the radio is far superior to any American radio network. I think publications like The Atlantic and The New Yorker are very interesting, even though they're not like hardcore news institutions or publications. But for those of you who don't know, and especially a lot of my friends on the right, my right-winger friends who just have fallen into this narrative of, kind of crafting whatever narrative they want to live by. By the way, I've said this many times before, I don't affiliate with any American political party, and I have tons of friends on the right and tons of family members on the right, and I have tons of friends on the left. Very few family members on the left. I despise both parties. I think it's ridiculous. Our system is broken. The right now seems to have completely and utterly lost their mooring. They do not understand fact-checking. So, for example, I was talking to an immediate family member recently, and I asked them about fact-checking, and they had no idea what I was talking about. And I said, well, for example, John McPhee, who's a famous author, writer, who wrote for The New Yorker for many decades, wrote a book called Draft Number 4 about writing. And in that book, they talk about the lengths at which The New Yorker goes to fact-check articles. I think journalism has eroded to such a degree that people don't even understand there is something called fact-checking. That publications, good ones, will not publish something without verification. It does not happen because their credibility is on the line. Now, living in a post-truth culture, all of these institutions are endangered, and my feeling is that they will go extinct because Americans, for the most part, do not want the truth anymore. In fact, a lot of people do not believe there is such a thing as the truth, or math, or science, or fact. They just don't. We're past that point. So inevitably what will happen, in my opinion, is that we are going to implode in dramatic fashion. For the rest of the world, you'll get a good laugh. For a while, the economies will tank, all that will happen, and then the pieces will fall out, and America will potentially rebuild itself from the rubble. I know, you thought I was an optimist. No, my friends, I'm a realist. Okay, number 2, how does one stay on track when confronted by a new palette? How does one stay on track when confronted by a new palette? I'm not entirely sure what that means. Practice? Eliminating distractions? So the only thing I can even connect this to is 2019, I went to Albania. I started double exposures. I knew they weren't that great. I felt like it was a gimmick. I was doing it because it made me trick me into feeling like I was making progress. Then I gave it 2 years of time, and I thought, I don't know, maybe I should rethink this. I go back. I've already got those images from 2019. How can I refine these, make them better? I go back with an X-T4. I can now shoot 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 images on a frame. I make the work from this year's trip. I give it some time. I just made a 108-page zine, which is like a first draft. I'll look at it. I'm living with it. And, there's a dozen or so images that are popping up that I'm like, I think this might be a decent image. Again, it's kind of a gimmick. Is it the kind of work that I did in the past? No. But I've come to the realization that I will, chances are, never be able to do the work that I did in the past because the world has changed, I've changed, and my job will not allow it. I'm slowly morphing and adapting to this new palette, which is color, number 1, and multi-exposures, number 2. It takes time. And it takes being left with your own thoughts and not having other people directing. As you have noticed, I have not spent the last 3 weeks after returning from Albania and being here in Maine, I have not spent this whole time blasting out social media pictures of my Albania trip. Why would I do that? all that does is pollute the entire narrative. It pollutes me, it pollutes my mind, it pollutes the narrative. It makes people weary of me, it makes them weary of the work, it lessens the work, it lessens the impact, it dumbs down the entire process. What I have done is I have sat and percolated over that work and looked at it. And I mocked up, I said, a 108-page zine. There are myriads of mistakes with it. I paid $27 total for the zine and the shipping. I pay for all my publications as a giant FU to all the professional photographers out there who over the years have said the only reason you use Blurb is you get your books for free. That is not the case. I pay for my books just to shut those people up because they don't make good things and they're looking for reasons not to. So that was a way for them to deflect things onto me. You might think I'm making that up or that that's uncommon or crazy. It's not. That's one of the realities of being in my job is you have to deal with stuff like that. I don't mind. I love making publications. I started making them in 1993 and I've paid for all my publications for the most part since then. Also had a lot of clients pay for publications. But I'm understanding this new palette, but it's taking time and patience and focus. When I'm sitting and writing and my brain is free and I'm looking at some of these images, like I had a couple. This is an image right here from a student in the class who brought his Fuji. It's probably not going to focus because God knows whatever reason. Now, is my focus blown? Yeah, probably. There it is. It's back. I'm slowly. By the time this camera becomes obsolete, I will figure out how to use it. So anyway, that's how I would adapt to the palette. Number 3, can you tell us about your binoculars? I can, but I'm not gonna. Just kidding, I will. I use a set of Canon image stabilized binoculars that are probably conservatively 20 years old. My guess is they are probably closer to 25 years old. They are still working. There is a glitch from time to time. I used them the other day, and when you press down on the button to get the stabilization, it started vibrating like this, which I've never seen before. It's eating through batteries. Rechargeable batteries hardly last at all, and if you put a regular alkaline battery in, it's good for like an hour. However, if I was going to buy binoculars now, there's a couple of brands I would look at. You have the famous classic brands like Swarovski or whatever those guys are. I've never had any of those. They seem incredibly expensive. Leica is known for their binoculars. I'm sure they're great. Nikon makes great binoculars. However, the brand that I was able to play with recently that really jumped out to me was Fujinon binoculars. I used their nautical binoculars, which are not designed for birding, but they were absolutely insane. The image stabilization is incredible, but they're big and they're heavy. And all the under models in the Fujinon lineup were beautifully crafted and built. They were easy, they were light, and they were absolutely bright, brilliant binoculars. So I would definitely look at Fujinon if you're looking at binoculars. Swarovski, is that it? Did I butcher that pronunciation? And I love image stabilization. Once you go IS, it's hard to go back because that little bits of movement when you're trying to identify a bird that may be in a plumage that's a transition between seasons or ages or whatever, image stabilization to me is fantastic. And I don't know all the model names of the Fujinon and which have IS and which don't, or which Leicas have IS. I see the vast majority of birders I see don't use IS. And I'm baffled by that. If you're a birder, please let me know why that's the case, because I don't know, maybe you guys don't drink coffee. Maybe you don't do massive amounts of amphetamines. I don't know. Is Sudafed not on your daily intake list? I can't hold that steady with binoculars. And man, when you lock in the IS, it's just, feels good. Okay, number 4, this also is a question about, are your multiple exposures done in camera? Yes, always. I am not a sit at the computer and craft images after the fact guy. I never have been. I don't have any interest in that. I spend my entire life in front of the computer for my job, and anything I can do to keep away from it in my free time is a good thing. And plus, I come from in-camera culture. When I was in school, you did not crop your images at all. This was, you printed your images full rebate so that you could see the entire negative. When I got into the journalism world, you never cropped, you always showed full rebate for legal reasons. And also because it proved you knew what you were doing in the field. If you were sloppy in the field, you end up doing a lot of cropping and manipulation in the darkroom, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted my images to speak full frame all the time, and so I feel the same with the multiple exposures. I want to do them in camera. I'm not sitting after the fact and doing them on the computer, although some people do, and if that's your cup of tea, well then, Do it. By the way, a bird flew into the window earlier. I do not think it ended well. Did not end it well. Number 5. This is number 5. Did you buy a GoRuck GR1 bag? For those of you who don't know, I had 2 students in Albania who were using a bag called GoRuck, a GR1, which is, I think they deem it the world's toughest backpack. And these students travel all over the world, and they only have this little backpack. Their packing system was really slick and brilliant and kind of funny because it was just so minimal, right? Compared to everybody else, including myself, they had a minimal amount of stuff. They have been on the road since we came back from Albania. They've been on the road every single day since then, and they're also traveling nonstop. They've been overseas again. They've been out of the country, and they're just using these little GoRuck bags. I did not buy one because I'm not really doing a whole lot of traveling until September, October, November. Next out of country is November, and on that trip, based on, it's a work trip, not a me trip, which means I've got to take a ton of stuff I wouldn't take if it was just me. So I've got responsibilities, and that means bringing kit I would never normally take. So I'm going to have at least a roller bag and a backpack. So the GoRuck looks fantastic, but it's also $395 or something. Now, if it lasts for 20 years, great. I just have so many other bags right now, and again, it wasn't a priority. Question number 6, what print projects are you working on now? Whew, that's a lot. Okay, print projects I am working on now. Well, Essay Magazine, which I started a few years ago, which I haven't printed an issue of in God knows how long. For those of you who don't know, I started this thing called Essay, E-S-S-A-Y, and this is my tribute to the original Life magazine. The cover design of the magazine, the zine series that I do, is an exact replica of Life magazine's cover design template, but I use a different color palette. They were red and white, I'm black and white. The zines are 40 pages. I published them in 6x9 trade book and magazine at the same time. So 2 formats, same material, same time. One is not better than the other. They are simply different. It's a different experience. An 8.5x11 glossy material experience and a 6.9 uncoated material experience. Only reason I did Essay Magazine was to prove to photographers how easy, affordable, and strategic it was to do your own magazine. If you're a documentary photographer and you don't have your own magazine, what the heck are you waiting for? Why do you not have your own magazine? Why are you not collaborating with other people? I can only ask these questions so many times, and vast majority of pros find a reason not to do it. That was not me. I said, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to put it out, and I'm going to show people all of these things, which I did, and I did 4 issues. And then I stopped because I figured if you can't figure it out after 4 issues, I can't help you. The design of these, not particularly good. The editing, not particularly good. That was not the point. This was not about me selling these and making money. This was not about me showing off. This was just about me saying, hey, if you want to do this, here's how you do it. So 5th issue is percolating in my mind right now. And it will be better than the first 4, but I'm not saying it's going to be great, because do I have a lot of time to work on it? No, but I think it's an interesting thing. And it's a good way of reminding photographers, what are you waiting for? Why would you not do this? AG23. I'm actively working right now to get Blurb more involved in AG23 without being involved. My preference would be for Blurb to print AG23 for free, and for us to take AG23 and make it part of the marketing department, but not from the promoting Blurb perspective. It would be from the, hey, we're Blurb. We know what we're doing when it comes to print, and so internally we have our own print publication, AG23, and oh, by the way, we are going to feature creatives that we think are interesting. That's it. We're going to pay them. We're going to give away micro grants. We're going to print this. We're going to basically continue what Rick and I started, and Jay and Zoe, what we started with AG23, and continue that, but with Blurb as the engine behind it instead of Beyond, because Beyond is out as a partner. So AG23 is there. What else do I have? I'm working on a Baja thing. Why is this thing freaking out? Wow. If this is in focus, it'll be a miracle. I can't win. He's going to keep calling me. He's going to keep calling me. Cameron, get over here and pick me up. All right. I'm also working on Baja, and I've got my Birds of Prey project that I explained to somebody yesterday. This could be the coolest project I've done in 20 years. But it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time, and I don't have the time unless I convince Blurb to free me up to go and do it. and I don't think that's going to happen. Plus, it needs a lot of luck, and because it's located in a remote location, and it's what I would classify as a needle in the haystack photography, which is very, very long amounts of time and very few images in return, but the images you get are fantastic. Plus, I have to do the writing part, which is going to be pretty extensive. It's going to be probably 90 pages of copy, and do I have time to write that? No. So, I'll forget I even mentioned it. Number 7, are you going to Paris in the fall? It's looking good, people, but I don't know for sure. I got a call next week about this and about a bunch of other events that I have in the fall, some of which we've already signed up and paid for, and others that are potentials. When I pitched it, I thought it was maybe 30 to 50% chance I would go, closer to 30. Now it's looking much better. So that could be good. Let's see. Let me give you a little rundown of what, all right, what the heck is going on? The focus points on this thing, there's the little one that's on my eye all the time. Then there's a middle one, and then there's a large one. And they're going 100 miles an hour in and out, all three at the same time. Doesn't normally happen. I didn't touch anything. Don't touch the hair. Okay, so Paris would be about periphoto, attending periphoto, not showing my own work. This trip has nothing to do with me. Periphoto is the largest photography show in the world. It's a fantastic show. I've been many times in the past. And also there's a parallel show called Polycopies, which is held on a barge in the middle of the river. And that is a book publishing, like a self-pub and a published book festival that runs in parallel with Periphoto. Then Periphoto itself has a publishing category and also a huge exhibition of the best photo books printed that year. And they also have a big contest about photo books. Tons of photographers are there, tons of gallerists, curators, a lot of industry people. It would be fantastic. I would also love to organize some sort of photographic thing in the city, whether it's just hanging out with people and talking, or it's doing a photo walk, or it's a combination of those things. That would be cool. And I've reached out on Discord to a lot of people who said, yes, I'm close, or I live in Belgium and I'd get on the train and come over. That could be really fun. Now, November in Paris, I've been there when the weather was absolutely ideal, and I've been there when it was absolutely mind-numbingly frigid, cold, sub-zero. It was brutal. Even, and I would much prefer to shoot in the cold than the warm, and it was like all I could do to stay outside. I had some friends that were there that year. They were in the same boat. So that's Paris. Number 8, Maine birding update. Oh, man. So I haven't seen anything exotic. Let me just read you some of the things that I have seen. These are pretty much everyday birds. Here, I would start with common eider, they're all over the place in the little coves around here. Cardinals, crows, pigeons, bald eagles, terns, gulls, cormorants, goldfinch, song sparrow, gray catbirds, great crested flycatcher, tufted titmouse, blue jay. Those are the birds that you see pretty much all the time, and there's more that I'm just leaving out. Haven't seen anything where I was like, oh my God, what is that? Oh, I forgot. I did. I'm lying. I saw a pileated woodpecker. I literally thought it was a human coming through the woods. I'm sitting on the back deck and I hear like logs crashing together. That's what it sounded like. And I thought, some guy's off course. He's hit his pitching wedge into the woods. He's staggering out. It could be Carl from Caddyshack. And I don't see anyone. And I'm thinking, it's an animal. It's a black bear coming through the woods. No. And then I look up and I see this woodpecker that's probably this tall. And it has this incredible fire red head on it. And it was massive. And I'm looking at it through the binoculars and I got a super tight view of it. And I was like, oh my God, what is that? And I looked it up and I'm pretty sure it was a pileated woodpecker, which rivaling the northern flicker in my mind as the two most beautiful woodpeckers. And if you haven't seen either one of those, I'm telling you, if you have any interest in color palette, design, shape, aeronautics, these things are incredible. You don't have to be a birder to appreciate these things. That's the first pileated woodpecker I've ever seen. I've seen tons of common northern flickers. Okay, number 9. How would I document a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood, and how is Operation Improve coming along? So a couple of months ago, I did a film called Operation Improve I had a list of things that I was hoping to improve on in my life. I would say that it's going okay. I think health-wise, I'm doing pretty well, except for my calf pull. But otherwise, I've been really good. The Lyme symptoms have really kind of tapered off mostly, and so I feel pretty good about that. Language, no. Guitar, no. Design, no. So maybe I haven't really made a lot of progress. But what has happened is the workload has fired back up like it was around 2018, 2019. So I don't think I'm not going to have time to do any of this stuff. I don't think my photography, I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago, my photographic skills are deteriorating. That's just the way it is now. I don't spend a lot of time making pictures, and I think photography is a sport, and the more you practice, the better you are. And if you don't practice, you atrophy, your skills atrophy, and that's where I'm at right now. It's not to say I couldn't get them back if I had a good time to set aside where I could really do nothing but photograph, but even right now, that wouldn't even be till next year. And that's never going to happen because by the next few weeks, my spring, summer is going to start filling up into next year. So Operation Improved, not so great. How would you document a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood? You just start, I mean, look, I lived in Southern California. Southern California tears down anything that has any kind of cultural value, and they put up strip malls that has like a Thai restaurant, a tattoo parlor, a laundry place, and daycare. And there's thousands, tens of thousands of these all over. Newport, when I was there, there was an old building right on Coast Highway that was incredible. It had this amazing ripped down fake terracotta roof that you got to repair every 2 years. Stucco walls you got to repair every 5 years. One business after another failed in that spot. They just tear everything down. Whereas other parts of our country are much better at preservation. But yesterday, I had a conversation with someone who lives in Boston. There's a historic building in his neighborhood that somehow was deemed not quite historic enough, and they're going to tear the whole thing down, and the neighborhood is really pissed off. Money talks, probably a developer that just comes in and says, look, I want that for something, and I don't know, whatever, a gap. And they're going to come in and throw money, and funny how these city officials suddenly change their mind about things like that. I've seen it happen in Santa Fe as well, although Santa Fe has a much tighter historic community. They call them the hysterical community, not the historic, because sometimes they make decisions that aren't on the up and up, but at least there's a semblance of something that requires, adhering to tradition and things. But rapidly gentrifying neighborhoods are all over the country. And the thing is, you start and you shoot. And a lot of times with a story like that, you might be shooting things that aren't photographically sexy. It could be the facade of a building. It could be an empty lot, because they're changing and you don't know what they're going to be. So it's better to get them than not get them. And I think that's happening everywhere. I know it's happening here in Maine. I've seen a lot of changes since I first started coming here like 25, 26 years ago. Okay, number 10. Is Googling something enough research? Not really. But Google can lead you to the research rabbit hole. We have, the library is an amazing place for research. The people who know how to research could probably use Google to get them to other institutions where they can further that research. But a quick Google search where you look at a couple of things and go out, that's half-assing it. Let's face it. There's a lot of photographers half-assing it. A lot of photographers don't know what they don't want to know what's been done. They don't want to know context. They don't want to know reference, because all of a sudden it makes the work they're producing not so shiny. It's sobering when you do research and you come across stuff that you're like, oh man, I didn't know about that. And that person's work is way better than my work. Or I got the story wrong. Or I don't know history. Speaking of which, you know who this guy is? I'll give you a hint. Bobby Oppenheimer. You want to talk about research? If you read that biography of Oppenheimer, and you read about what was happening in America in the 1950s, early 50s with McCarthyism, and what they did to Oppenheimer, playing politics, and you look at what's happening today, and you can't see a parallel narrative there, it's because you don't know your history. Exactly the same stuff. Different names, different players, same McCarthyism stuff, just called a different thing. So history is important. Look, research is fun. Research is only going to make your story better. Yes, you may take your lumps up front. There may be some uncomfortable moments, but it's going to lead you to the promised land. There is no other way. So Googling a quick Google search, no. Google to end result, yes. Number 11. I can't do it. I cannot do it. Whoever sent me this one, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I've done it. I've done it more than humanly possible. I've done it. I don't know what else to say. Box speed. It's gonna keep calling me. It's gonna keep calling me. Cameron, get over here. Push, pull, box speed, and processing. Just go online, look it up. Box speed is not the true speed of the film. It's not. Get over it. It's not to say you can't do it. You can rate Tri-X at 400. You're probably going to get thin negatives if you process normal. That's it. And with negative film, you expose for the shadow, you process for the highlight. With transparency, you expose for the highlight. It's a totally different way of working. Color neg, like black and white. You're exposing for that shadow. That's why people overexpose. They shoot portrait 400 at 100, and then fashion and portrait photographers in LA would push it a stop or push it 2 stops on top of that. There is no right and wrong. There is no perfect formula. Everybody sees a different way. I used my Tri-X. I used a certain processor, a certain agitation, a certain temperature. My buddy Eric in San Diego, he was a Rodinal guy. His negatives looked fantastic. I don't know how he did it. He just did it. He had a dark room in a cave. Don't ask me why. And he would process with Rodinal, and I would see his work, and I'm like, that is gorgeous. It's like a painting. It's a palette of grain. So is his work, is that the right way and mine was the wrong way? No, it's just different. So pushing and pulling is going to get expensive if you go to a commercial lab. They're going to pay, you're going to have to pay extra for push and pull. And you can do the same thing if you're processing at home with just by changing up your process. Okay, last one, and this is one I wish I could spend more time answering, but I can't because it's incredibly complicated, and we live in a very litigious society. I get a lot of questions about model releases. The short answer is model release every single recognizable human in your photographs if you want to give yourself the best chance of not losing a lawsuit. A model release will not stop you from getting sued. All the person has to do is say, I didn't know what I was signing. This happens all the time. And let me, all caps, this happened to me. So a model release is not going to stop you being sued. A model release is not a complete closed safety net. Release everybody you can. But here's the reason why I'm bringing this up. Somebody wrote me and said, I realized I don't want to do that work if I have to release people. Because you go into a documentary scene where you're trying not to influence the scene in front of you, and all of a sudden, you're like, release, 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 release. I have to release all those people because they're recognizable in this frame. So you put your camera down, you pick up your releases and your pen, and then you have to go over to a bunch of strangers and explain to them what it is and try to convince them to sign it. I used to do a lot of photo assisting, and this was one of my duties. I was working for a guy who worked for National Geographic, for Sports Illustrated, for Time, for Newsweek, all these publications. We would go into the field, and we would be in these scenes, and he's working the scene. And he would boom, boom, boom. He's working, working, working. He'd lift his head up from the camera and he would point at people and he would go release, 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 release. And I had to do exactly what I just said. I had to blow up the scene because as soon as I walk into the scene and go, hey, can I get everybody's attention? This photographer just made your picture and I'm here to have model releases. And if we could really get you to sign, forget that scene ever going back to any semblance of normalcy. It's done. At that point, you are no longer a documentary photographer. You are a commercial photographer. An image that goes on the cover of a book is different from the image on the inside. The cover's being used to sell the book, so you better have a release from that. Whereas an image on the inside, if someone's in a public place, technically you may be okay, but it depends on the country you're in, and that is not going to stop someone from suing you. So you better have, if you're going to do this work a lot and put your work into the world to be sold, you better have a lawyer on retainer who knows who you are and what you're doing, and be prepared to use them because it's going to happen. So when I had my little situation a few years ago, the lawyers that I was dealing with all said the same thing. Wow, I can't believe you haven't been sued before. You're a documentary photographer. One person said you should be prepared for perpetual litigation for the rest of your career. So what do you think one of the reasons was for me walking away from full-time photography? Yes, that is it right there. And baby, it's only worse. It's only going to get worse. It's worse now than it was then, and next week it's going to be even worse. You're also going to start to see brands and people who are going to be able to copyright their image, and so anyone who photographs anything with either their image or a certain brand is a violation of copyright. So going to a place like Times Square where all the billboards and all the brands are, and you taking pictures and putting them on Instagram, I don't know. I don't know if you should get used to it. It's going to be hard for them to control that and also sue in those numbers because there's so many pictures being made. If you think I'm exaggerating, then you have no idea what's happening. If you think that they may or may not ban street photography in 3 or 4 countries in the world in the next 10 years, you don't know what's happening because these discussions have been going on for a long time. Some of the countries would surprise you. It is not good. And it's only going to get worse. So documentary, that's why for me, looking at these multi-exposures and kind of ambling towards conceptual photography is almost feels like mandatory because I don't see it ever going back to the freedoms that we had even a few short years ago. All right, that was Q&A number 10,000. I've got a good sweat going. I have a whole nother list of questions here. I've got probably another 12 or 14 that I didn't get to. This is already at 36 minutes, so I don't want to do that. But I appreciate you sending the questions in. I hope that was helpful, and I will be back with an agonizingly long another version of this.